Our journey begins in Missoula, the only city on our route and home to the University of Montana. We then head deep into the Flathead National Forest, a refuge for the once endangered bison. It's then north to the Bob Marshall Wilderness Complex, one of America's finest achievements in conservation. We fly north along the vast range of the Rocky Mountains. They make up the Continental Divide, from which water flows to either the Pacific on one side or the Atlantic on the other. Joining the Flathead River, we arrive at the confluence of its two main branches. It leads us to the last stop on our journey, the spectacular Hungry Horse Reservoir and its mighty dam. The state of Montana, affectionately dubbed Big Sky Country, has moved many an artist and writer. It was traveling across the county of Missoula that inspired American poet Robert Bly's In a Train. He writes of waking up and looking out of the window. Realizing where he is, he's filled with utter joy. While Bly enjoyed the views of the river from a passenger train, we follow this freighter along the Montana Rail Link. The line is vital in transporting coal as well as grain across the continent. It meanders through the eastern corridor of the Missoula, a valley so narrow that Native American tribes engaged in frequent skirmishes over bison. The area was covered in so many human bones that French fur trappers named it Hell's Gate. We follow both rail and river through this tight gap to catch our first glimpse of the city of Missoula. The settlement was founded in 1866, but its growth was spurred greatly by the arrival of the Northern Pacific Railway in 1883, which boosted its lumber industry. This depot, built at the turn of the 20th century, last serviced passengers in 1979, when Amtrak discontinued its North Coast route through southern Montana. While the logging industry here is long gone, Missoula thrives today as Montana's second most populated city. The first interstate center is one of several postmodern structures that's part of a major redevelopment plan. The ironclad dome of the Missoula County Courthouse is a towering presence in the downtown district. The neoclassical building was originally completed in 1910. The courthouse is currently one of Montana's few liberal delegations, having made state history for including sexual orientation in its anti-discrimination laws. This clock tower is part of Main Hall, the oldest structure at the University of Montana. It's one of several buildings that lie along this grassy expanse at the center of the campus, aptly named the Oval. The university has been a driving force in Missoula's economy since its opening in 1895. It's currently the city's largest employer and delivers millions in revenue from school-sponsored sporting and cultural events. Rolling Stone magazine called it the most scenic campus in America. On autumn Saturdays, 25,000 faithful fans flock to the northwest corner of the campus to cheer for their football team here at Washington Grizzly Stadium. It's the largest all-purpose stadium in the entire state, hosting multiple championship seasons in American football. Today, though, it's the turn of the school soccer team to practice on the field. Missoula's most recognizable landmark is the giant letter M that looks over the university. runners and hikers enjoy a 1.2-kilometer trail that zigzags down the steep hillside of Mount Sentinel. With 11 hairpin turns, the trail provides a challenging climb, rising nearly 190 meters to offer panoramic views of the Missoula landscape. During the school's annual homecoming celebration, lights illuminate the M as a way of welcoming alumni back to campus. It faces the Blue Mountains over to the western edge of the city. It's where we find the Bitterroot River and Fort Missoula. Established in 1877, it protected settlements in western Montana from hostile tribes of Native Americans. It features an open design layout, which was favored over the walled forts for almost every military outpost west of the Mississippi River. Today, Fort Missoula operates as a museum and heritage center. This site holds particular significance as it stationed one of the racially segregated units of the U.S. Army. Formed after the Civil War, the all-black regiments were nicknamed Buffalo Soldiers. The Historical Museum was established in 1975 in a bid to preserve what remained of the original fort. A collection of 13 historic structures and over 25,000 objects, such as this rare Shay-type locomotive, are on display. Indoor galleries feature exhibits from Missoula's early exploration to modern times, while the outdoor area presents original and relocated structures. Most prominent is the tall, conical structure called a teepee burner, which sawmills used to burn waste. From the logging industry to its role as a prison, the museum captures a slice of regional culture during the fort's peak years. Our journey now takes us over the Mission Range of the Rocky Mountains. Though it's a diverse habitat, it's probably best known as the Montana National Bison Range, the refuge that helped save the species from extinction. Between 30 and 60 million of these animals once roamed freely throughout North America. But in the late 1800s, the wild population reached a low of only 100 due to a government-sponsored eradication program. The mass slaughter intended to remove a vital food source from the Plains Indians and to ensure their relocation to reservations. Close to extinction, President Ted Roosevelt chartered the Montana National Bison Range in 1908 as a sanctuary for their conservation. It marked the first time Congress authorized public funds to protect wildlife. Today, it's estimated that up to 500 bison make this range their home, a real achievement for the nation's wildlife refuge system. The Flathead River borders the western edge of the Bison Range. And continuing north, a stretch of river well known to whitewater rafters comes into view: the Buffalo Rapids. The 11-kilometer tract courses through a canyon that's fed by a nearby dam. This extra flow can sometimes turn these waters into raging torrents, making them suitable only for the most skilled paddlers. This flat valley gives way to the massive peaks of the Mission Mountain Wilderness. Commonly referred to as the American Alps, this cluster of imposing summits on the western face of the range reach over 2,000 meters. Its highest point is McDonald Peak, soaring almost 3,000 meters above the valley. The rock here was formed billions of years ago. It's so old that the only fossils to be found here are of primordial plants. Today, the ragged peaks are snow-covered almost all year round. A confederation of Native American tribes manages much of the range, representing the only designated tribal wilderness actually established by its own people. In doing so, the committee stated, "These mountains belong to our children, and when our children grow old, they will belong to their children. In this way, and for this reason, these mountains are sacred." The vast Flathead National Forest continues beyond the icy peaks. It's a veritable wonderland for outdoors enthusiasts. Over 3,500 kilometers of trails provide paths for motor vehicles, cross-country skiing, horse riding, and mountain biking. Nestled in the pristine valley between the Mission and Swan Mountains is the Sealy-Swan Corridor. A 150-kilometer scenic drive along the Clearwater River. The dense willow marsh of the river is also a favorite for canoeing and fishing. The river flows into the tranquil Salmon Lake, one of the many natural bodies of water that link up along the valley. Rich in wildlife, visitors are encouraged to look out for migratory birds, from common goldeneyes to marsh-loving songbirds. At the north end of the corridor is Sealy Lake, a vibrant yet quaint town in Clearwater Valley's chain of lakes. Though it does have a local timber industry, it's first and foremost a resort town. The year-round population of around 2,000 doubles in the summer months as seasonal residents return to enjoy their mountain cabins along the 400-hectare lake. The town is also renowned for having one of the best fisheries in the state. The rainbow trout here are stocked several times a year, not least because the lake is home to a particularly voracious breed of pike known as the Loch Ness Godzilla. These aggressive eaters can deplete their food sources in only a few years. The beasts draw in pike fishers from all over the country, hoping to catch the fish that's over a meter long and can weigh up to 11 kilos. What a local once called a fish with attitude. Continuing north, we head off into the mountains once more, to a wild and undisturbed terrain that's less accessible than its neighbouring valley. The Bob Marshall Wilderness, considered the crown jewel of America's conservation lands, is the virtual backbone of the Rocky Mountains. Here, an array of ridges descend into gently sloping alpine meadows and thick forests. The wilderness extends 95 kilometers along the Continental Divide, separating two major Montana watersheds, the Flathead and the Sun Rivers. It was designated a preservation area in 1964 and named in honor of Bob Marshall, a forester who was noted for his pioneering conservation work in the 1930s. Today, this 400,000-hectare range is simply referred to as the Bob and is the third largest wilderness area in the lower 48 states. Though there are no roads, there are a few permanent structures, including some old ranger stations and horse bridges. Not only are motorized vehicles prohibited here, but also mechanical ones, such as bicycles and hang gliders. Despite this, or most likely because of these restrictions, the Bob is a popular holiday destination, providing ample leisure opportunities such as camping and fishing. With the highest population density of grizzly bears in the United States outside Alaska, the Bob has been vital to the survival of the species. It also provides a crucial habitat for the endangered grey wolf and bald eagle. Soaring high over the ridges and peaks, with only clouds for company, we catch the almost mystical quality that must have so impassioned Bob Marshall. Decades before Congress passed the Wilderness Act of 1964, he wrote, "Anyone who has stood upon a lofty summit and gazed over an inchoate tangle of deep canyons and cragged mountains, of sunlit lakelets and black expanses of forest, has become aware of a certain giddy sensation that there are no distances, no measures, simply unrelated matter rising and falling without any analogy to the banal geometry of breadth, thickness, and height." This northern section is the Great Bear Wilderness, lying west of the Continental Divide. Living up to its name, it hosts a dense habitat of both grizzly and black bears. Whilst there are only a handful of lakes here, there are over 800 kilometers of rivers and streams. A remote landscape, Great Bear offers a challenging adventure for both daring and skilled hikers. The middle fork of the Flathead River forms a natural border between the Great Bear Wilderness and Glacier National Park. After traveling a long, narrow path, the waterway arrives at this wide open valley, where its course begins to snake between meadows and forested slopes. This section is a seemingly unending series of bends and is popular among rafters for its lively white water. The river is joined by this railway, which takes a splendid route through the coniferous forest at the base of the mountain. The line dates back to the late 19th century, when America created a cross-country rail system. It made this spectacular scenery more accessible to those hungry for a taste of the great outdoors. The early success of Glacier National Park as a tourist destination owes much to the pioneering rail line conceived by industrialist James Hill, who viewed the alpine forest as a little Switzerland. Today, Amtrak continues to operate a daily train called the Empire Builder in Hill's honor. Like this freight carrier, it follows the original transcontinental route of the Great Northern Railway. It stretches 3,500 kilometers from Chicago to Seattle. It makes 2 stops at the East and West Glacier stations, hearkening its passengers back to the golden years of train travel. In addition to Amtrak's Empire Builder, the Flathead River is accompanied by a track for a different breed of transport: mule. Since most of this forest was only accessible by rail during its early years, the rangers relied heavily on pack animals. The trails were designed for fire control, administration, grazing, and recreation. Because of budget constraints and the rugged terrain, trails were built instead of roads. On the whole, though, these routes were made up as they went along. Rangers would hack away at the undergrowth as they traveled through the woods. mules were preferred over horses as pack animals as they were more sure-footed, able to carry heavier loads and required less feed. The packers and their stock were the early lifeblood of the Forest Service. A park employee during that era once stated, "If a lookout, ranger or firefighter is without tobacco, coffee or even his mail, he is a discontented human being. The mule packs in whatever is necessary for his peace of mind and body." After taking a westward course to Glacier National Park, the middle fork of the Flathead River heads southwest until it finally joins the North Fork. The confluence of these two rivers is a remarkable sight. One of the striking features is the manner in which the icy blue waters combine with the colourful gravel that accumulates over the course of the river. Circling back over the embankment, we find this unique rock formation just south of the confluence. This section has fallen cleanly away to expose the reddish rock beneath. What's left is this striking single cliff that's just one of many incredible sights found along the Flathead River. And following the waterway south, we near the end of our journey at the Hungry Horse Reservoir. Stretching 56 kilometers through remote national forest, it figures that such a massive body of water can only be held in by a mighty dam to match. At 172 meters in height, Hungry Horse was the third largest dam in the world when construction finished in 1953. It had taken over 9 years to complete. Around 1 billion kilowatt hours are generated annually from the dam. While its main purpose is to provide electricity, the reservoir and surrounding areas are also used for recreation. The name Hungry Horse comes from 2 freight horses that had wandered away from their sleigh during a severe winter in 1900. They were found a month later deep in snow, starved and weak. But miraculously, they were nursed back to health. The blue sky reddens as the sun begins to set over the majestic landscape of northwest Montana. We catch our last glimpse of Swan and Flathead Mountains immersed in this undisturbed wilderness. These mountains represent the antithesis to an era where change is constant, frequent, and tangible. They were here long before the Native Americans settled at their feet, before early European explorers from the east traversed their corridors in search of the Pacific, before tracks were laid down and streets were paved. The sun makes its final gesture over the horizon in Big Sky country, darkening the wondrous landscape as day turns to night. A perfect moment to end this journey.